Hi, I'm Anna at the Sewing Studio and I've got Hannah from Bernina here with me, and today we are going to take a look at the fabulous Bernina 770 QE Plus. Now 770 QE stands for Quilting Edition?
It does, yes. So this is the Quilted Edition, but it is actually a really good all-rounder. It's great if you're dressmaking, if you want to do, home decoration products, curtains. It's got a stitch for everything. So although it is the Quilter's Edition, it's really useful for all types of sewing.
Now, one thing that is really striking about this machine, and people always say about it when they come in the shop, what stands out is its size.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lovely big machine. I think one of the real features of this machine is the throat space. So we have 10 inches to the right of the needle, but we also have 5 inches to the top. So if you've got a really large quilt, you've got loads of lovely room to get all that fabric underneath, and it makes quilting much easier when you've got a lot more room. Another lovely feature is the large table. So we've got this nice large table which is very supportive. It really holds your fabric up and makes sure there's no extra stress being put on it. So I think that is a really nice feature. Then on this model we actually have a 9mm stitch width, so that means you can produce really lovely large decorative patterns. You've got a large satin stitch which can be useful in many projects. So then we have the lovely Bernina bobbins. Now they hold 70% more thread than a standard bobbin, so there's a lot less changing of thread, because we know that can be so annoying when you're getting through a project and you run out of thread. So yeah, it's a lovely large machine, and that really helps you with all those big projects.
Now proportionally as well, it also has this large touchscreen.
Yeah, the screen's great. So it's centrally located, so when you're sat in front of the machine, it's really easy to just look up and see what's happening. It's very well designed, so it's really simple to use. And what I like about it is all the different stitch types have their own folder, because it's got so many stitches. It has over 1,800 stitch patterns that, to have them all grouped together is very helpful. So at the top we have all our practical stitches, and if we want we can open the screen up so we can get a really good view of everything that's available. And they have some lovely options, for dressmaking. We have some automatic sequences, bar tacks, all your standard, straight, zigzag, all the stitches you would expect. And then we can just close that down. Then we have all our decorative stitches, which are all in separate folders. So because there's so many, it's nice to have them all grouped together. So we've got, for example, all the floral stitches. Then we have all our fonts, which we'll look at a bit later, so that's useful when you're using combination mode, buttonholes, and our quilting stitches. So lots and lots of different options. So if I just go back to my practical stitches, what I really love about the screen is, it's also very helpful. So for instance, let's say I had a straight stitch and I was going to I was putting a zip in. If I go into my foot recognition screen here, and I tell it, I'm just going to narrow that down, I tell it I'm going to use foot 4, select that there and come out. We'll notice that the stitch has now gone red, because if I had foot 4 on, it would hit the foot unless I changed my needle position. So this screen and the machine is constantly looking out for you and making sure you don't make any mistakes. It really helps you and guides you through all the choices you're making. When you select a stitch on screen, so whether it be a straight stitch or a zigzag or one of the lovely decorative stitches, there is a default setting for it, so you can automatically start to sew. But if your project demands that you need to change that, then of course you can. You can change the width with the wonderful dials, or the length. You can change your needle position, and we have 11 different needle positions, so you can get that stitch exactly where you want it. And we can also change things like the tension, foot pressure. There are so many ways you can just edit that stitch, so it's absolutely perfect for your project. And I think that makes a huge difference, because you're getting a real level of control when you're working with a Bernina.
Now, one thing I love when sewing on a Bernina is just how pleasurable and enjoyable the experience is. Now, I know that's down to all the features that are on there, but it's also how it helps you get that perfect stitch.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's largely due to the way the presser feet and the feed dogs work, and how smoothly the fabric feeds underneath the machine. And it gives you that real Bernina feel. The thing I love about the presser feet on the Bernina are they're really, really easy to put on and take off. You know, just you can do it with one hand, which I think is great. They're lovely solid feet, so they're one piece. So you've got that, you don't need to change the soles. They're all individual feet, which I think are great. And also with Bernina, there is a foot for everything. You know, no matter what project or job you're doing, there's going to be a special foot to help you get a perfect result with that.
So much so, they even produce a whole book of their feet with guides and everything in there of what each foot is for and how to use them.
Yeah, that foot is brilliant. I think that's a really good addition to the machines. So what helps with the feed is we've got the box feed system on the machines. And the way that works is the feed dogs come up and they support your fabric through the entire formation of the stitch. So what that means is it's coming up and your presser foot's clamping down and it's really supporting it as it moves it through. And because of that, you get a lovely stitch, but it also means there's no pushing or pulling. And that really, really gives it that lovely, as I say, that Bernina feel, and it helps the fabric flow underneath the foot. And that also means that, you know, you don't have to support your fabric so much. You just need to guide it in the right direction, and the machine does the rest of the work for you. So that's a lovely feature on the Berninas. So the next thing I wanted to talk about in the how easy they are to use is the Bernina freehand system, which is the knee lift. Now I love the knee lift. I think it makes such a big difference, and it can actually speed your sewing up as much as 20%, which makes a huge difference. So what happens is you plug your knee lift in there and you step on to your foot control to sew, and then you step off and you use your knee to move the lever, and what that does is raises the presser foot, lowers your feed dogs, and then that allows you to pivot if you want, or it allows you to take your fabric out of the machine. So as I say, that makes you really fast and efficient. Yeah. It means you're not trying to, touch buttons or anything. You can just all do it in one smooth action, which I think is great. But I know some customers, don't like to use the knee lift. Maybe they have problems with their knees, something like that. And if that's the case, well, on these machines, you have the brilliant built-in hovers. So it does a very similar job. You have two types of hover. You have the initial needle up hover, and that means when you start to sew and you lower your presser foot, it automatically raises it slightly so you can reposition your fabric. So because, we're talking about precision, we might be quilting, dressmaking, and we want to start exactly on, the right spot. And that just gives us that moment to get it just right before we start to sew. So that's our needle up hover, which is great. But then we also have a needle down hover, and we can have a medium or high hover. That means when we stop with needle down, it will automatically raise and allow you to pivot, which is really useful if you're doing something like a plique where, you're pivoting a lot. So, yeah, I love the knee lift, and also the hovers are very, very helpful.
Now, I know from experience that these machines coat really well on thin fabrics and thicker fabrics.
Yeah, they do. They're really great all-rounders. You can work on loads of different fabric types. And I think the main reason for that is actually the wonderful Bernina hook. So this is the Bernina hook, and it's the heart of the machine. This is what forms the stitch. It's made from one solid bit of metal that's milled and then hand polished. And the hook to needle clearance on these is 0.05 millimetres. So it's very precise. They're beautifully engineered. And because of this, you can work on really, really thick fabrics or really, really thin fabrics without getting any skipped stitches, which I think is brilliant. Yeah. Another nice feature we have on these machines is the foot pressure. So if we imagine we're working on something really bulky, like a bulky quilt or bags, something like that, you've got a large volume of fabric is trying to pass in between your feed dogs and the presser foot. Now, to be able to vary the amount of pressure that the foot is putting on that fabric is really key, because that allows it to pass through nice and smoothly and it doesn't get stuck. And again, you're getting that lovely Bernina feel of it, just melting under the machine, really flowing through, which I think is brilliant.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because as sewers, we don't really take into consideration what goes on inside the machine. We just take it for granted that it's going to do what we need it to do. Now, all Berninas have a DC motor, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So they have a direct current motor, that's the DC. And what that means is it gives consistent power no matter what you're sewing on. So if you're sewing on very fine fabrics or very thick fabrics, you're always getting that consistent feel. And what I love about it is you can sew one stitch at a time with your foot pedal. You know, if you get to the end of a row of stitching and you need just one more stitch, you can just put your foot on your wonderful Bernina foot control and it will do one stitch. Or you can, you know, put your foot flat down and you can do 1,000 stitches per minute and really, you know, race through a project. But it's having that level of control makes a really big difference because you've got the confidence, you know that you can go as slow as you want or as fast as you want. And that really, really helps you when you're sewing.
So you touched upon the Bernina foot control. It's more than just a foot control though, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So with the Bernina foot control, you have a kickback feature on it. So if we press forwards, you know, we're increasing the speed as we sew, but if we use the heel to kick back, what happens is you can use that to make your needle go up or down, which is really useful if you've got needle down set, because you might want it to come up, so you can simply use your foot. Or it's programmable, so we can change the function for that. So you can have it so it not cuts or raises the foot, or a combination of any of those. So it's very, very useful. And it's just another way that with the Bernina, you can set it up so it really, really works perfectly for you. You can get it to do exactly what you want, which is one of the things I love about these machines.
Now, apart from the wonderful stitch control that it has, what is it that makes it a quilter's edition?
Okay, well, we touched on it earlier, but I think one of the really key features is the size. You know, if you're putting a really large king-size quilt underneath it, you know, you need the extra room. And the wonderful table, as I say, was very supportive. But if we have a look at the quilting folder with all the quilting stitches in, I can tap here, and then I can open that up. We can open that out. Now, we've got lots and lots of different quilting stitches, which is great. So we have a quilter's securing stitch, we have so many stitches per inch, we've got lots of different stitches which are great for crazy patchwork, and I can, you know, lots and lots of lovely stitch options there. If we just go back, so everything you could want in terms of stitches. But then we also have, that comes with the machine, our great wonderful foot 97D. Now, the thing about this foot is it's actually wider on one side. Because you have a 9mm stitch width, one side of the foot is wider, so it makes better contact with the feed dogs. And with that box feed system, you get great feed when you're working on larger projects. We also have the dual feed. So because it's a D foot, it has that cutout at the back. And then we can use our dual feed, which is the lever at the back that we just pull down and it will plug into the back of the foot. That's instead of using something like a walking foot maybe, and it's much better because, as you can see, you've still got a really clear view of the needle. It's not so bulky. Now what that does is it acts as a feed from the top as well as the bottom. So we have our wonderful feed dogs at the bottom, then the dual feed on the top. And that just keeps all our layers together. So if we're working on a quilt sandwich, we've got 3 layers and we don't want one layer to move more than the other, you know, to get a little creep, I think that's what they call it. So it keeps it all together and we get a nice smooth feed. So that's foot 97D. And it also comes with a great guide to keep everything in line when you're doing a 1/4 inch seam. And I just wanted to mention the stitch plate, because the stitch plate has lots of really useful markings on it. It has your little 1/4 inch marking here, and we have markings going through the table, and we also have more markings on a little tape measure here. So everything is helping you keep it in line and achieve that perfect seam.
And what about when it comes to free motion quilting?
Okay, so when you're free motion quilting, it can be quite a challenge to keep all those stitches nice and even, and it, you know, it can make it a bit tense when you're getting your work through the machine. So Bernina thought, what can we do about it? And they came up with the brilliant Bernina stitch regulator, and this is such a game changer. It's a wonderful piece of kit. Now what happens is, I'll just get it out and show you. So it's a foot that you attach to the machine, and it fits on like you know, any of the other feet, but you do have to plug it in. Now what happens is this foot has a little sensor underneath. Now when you're moving your fabric, it monitors how quickly you move your fabric, and if you move your fabric quickly, it speeds the stitches up. If you move your fabric slowly, it slows them down, and it keeps them lovely and even. Now I think the thing that I love most about this, and I would always use my BSR, is it just means that it's really relaxing to quilt. You know, I feel that people spend hours and weeks making beautifully pieced quilt tops, and then they come to quilt it, and then they suddenly get all really nervous, like, am I going to mess it up? Is the design not going to work? You know, it puts people off a little bit, I think. But when you're using the BSR, all you need to think about is your design, and you can be really creative and relaxed, and you know you're going to get great results. So I think in that respect, the BSR is brilliant, and it's one of the main features of these machines, you know. It just makes quilting so easy, so I love my BSR.
Now, although this is a quilter's edition, it is also a great all-round machine, great for dressmakers, crafters, people that do home decorations, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. You know, lots of people who sew, they don't just do one discipline, they'll do lots of different things. So I think it's really important that your machine can cover all those bases, and it definitely does. I mean, we've looked a little bit at the folders, but we have over 38 practical stitches. There's over 500 decorative stitches. So if you're doing any decorative work, you've got loads of lovely stitch options. And, you know, you can look at them on screen, but when you stitch them out, they really come to life, some of those decorative stitches. But what I wanted to show you is the buttonholes on this machine. So if you're making, you know, any garments or even cushions and you want to do a buttonhole on the back, it's really clever the way it works on this. So I've got my buttonhole foot on, and I can go into the folder for the buttonholes, and we've got lots of lovely choices. And again, that we can ask the machine if we're not sure what they're designed for, it will tell us. But let's say I just use a standard buttonhole. Now, if I want to edit a stitch in any way, and this applies to the decorative stitches, the practical stitches, and also the buttonholes, I can simply go into information. And when I go into information, I can tell the machine how big I want my button to be. So I click here, which is my button measuring, and this is the bit I love. Now, where's my button gone? So what you do is you pop your button over the yellow circle, and then you can use your dials, and you just make it so the yellow circle is just peeking over the top. Hope we can see that there. And it's measured my buttonhole for me. So it's told me that my button is 19.5 mil. It's going to add a mil either side for the thickness, and then that's it. I'm ready to go now. I can just put my fabric, the placket of my garment, underneath the foot and start to sew, and it's going to sew exactly the right length of buttonhole, which is just so lovely. I mean, it's just so easy to do. And then it's going to remember that, and then for the next one I can just repeat it over and over again. So buttonholes are really easy. And the other thing I like about buttonholes is we can also change the slit width. So if I just come out of that there, what I can do in information is I can change the slit width. So sometimes you have really sort of chunky buttons, don't you? If you're working on something like a bag or heavy coat, you want quite a thick button. So then you might want to adjust the slit width, so you've got a bit more room for that button to go through. So you can even do that on this machine. We can tap there and we can change, and we can go up to 2 mil, so we can have a really, really wide gap in between. So I think you can see you can really, really tailor it so you get exactly the right result you want. And Bernina buttonholes do always look really nice, you know, that both beads are sewn in the same direction, so you don't ever get any distortion, and you get a really lovely quality feel to your buttonholes.
Now, I know lots of you like to personalise your projects, and there's 2 different ways you can achieve that with this machine.
Yeah, I think if you're personalising, it's really nice to put someone's name on something, or you know, the monogram, something like that, and you can do that with this machine. What you would do is you would use the fonts folder, so we can select that. And then we would go into combination mode. And then I can choose a font. So I'm going to choose my script font here, tap on that, and I can pop the screen open. And then it's just like a keyboard. So if I wanted to enter Bernina, I can press a capital B. Then I've got lowercase, numbers and characters. So I could go to lowercase, and then I can just enter the rest of my text in. It's not a QWERTY keyboard, so it's going to just enter that all in. And if I want a space, I can go in and I can select a space, and I could go and maybe put the machine number in, or you can put something far more fun in, you know, like your pet's name, your grandchild's name, something like that, but for today. So we've got Bernina 770, and then I just minimise that, take it back down, and then I can stitch it out. So I could add that to, you know, whatever project I was working to. And they do stitch out really nicely. The spacing, the style of the fonts work really well. They're really good. Now, you did mention 2 ways.
Yeah.
So if we're going to use the lettering on the machine, it's going to be a maximum of 9mm, because that's the maximum space we have. But if we wanted to go for something larger, you know, on the back of a sweatshirt, or, you know, a nice large monogram, then we might want to use the embroidery unit. So that's an optional accessory with this model. But we can add an embroidery unit, and then you can go much larger with your with the fonts, with any writing you want to do. And you know, once you've added an embroidery unit, there's loads of creative options you've got there. You know, you've got all the wonderful built-in designs. You can create your own designs. It's a really a whole area that you can add to your machine and take it to the next level. So I think it's great that you have that available with the machine.
And education is very important to Bernina, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. We really want you to get the most out of your machine, so we want you to know exactly how to use it. I mean, the machine itself is very helpful. I think I mentioned earlier, you know, there's the question mark. It will tell you what all the icons do. But we also have features like tutorials. So if I tap here, I can go into, say, something like threading, if I wanted to ask it a question about threading, winding the bobbin. Then it has these lovely animations, so it shows you exactly what you should be doing, and then you can go back. We also have the Creative Consultant, which is another really helpful feature. So if I press on the Creative Consultant, so let's say I was working on a fabric I don't use a lot, I might not be too sure how to set the machine up. So I could say I'm working on a jersey fabric, let's say, and I was going to put a zip into it. It will tell me what stitch, what needle, thread, and what foot it recommends. So it's recommending 4D with the dual feed on this. And then I can press the tick, and then it sets it all up for me. And what I like about it is it does things like it reduces the foot pressure, it changes the tension, makes all those little adjustments that you might not think of, so you get a really, really perfect result. So Creative Consultant's very helpful.
I'm just thinking it's like having you in the room.
Yeah, no,
with us when we're
built
sewing.
in.
Yeah.
No, it's brilliant. And also, I do think the Bernina manuals are great. I mean, I know some people love manuals, some people don't, which is why tutorials is really useful. But it does have a very, very extensive manual that you can refer to. Finally, I just wanted to mention that we do offer tuition. So we have a tuition centre in London, and you can come on a really fun day where you go through all the features and functions of the machine, and you get to spend time with some people who have the same model as you, and, you know, we get great feedback from those days. The customers really enjoy it. So I think that's really useful, because you know exactly what your machine can do, because you're going to have these machines for a long time, I hope, because they're very long lasting, and you want to be able to really get the most out of it. So I think that really helps.
Finally then, let's take a look at what accessories come with the machine.
Okay, so you get a nice range of accessories. So you've got everything you need to get started. Obviously, we've discussed the many, many feet that you can add to it at a later date, but to get started, you've got a good range. So if we have a look at the feet, we've got our standard reverse pattern foot 1C. Then we have one reverse pattern foot 1D, so that's for our dual feed. We have the buttonhole foot that we've already looked at. We have a zipper foot with the 4D, so we can again put our dual feed on with the zips, which is really helpful when you're letting it feed through. We have foot 20, our open embroidery foot, and that's really useful because it's cut open at the front, so you can really see what you're doing. That's a great visibility for the needle there, really good for applique. I love that foot. 97D we've got, which we've looked at earlier. So that's the basic range of feet. Then we've got our knee lift, which we've mentioned, which I love. It also comes with a straight stitch plate. So if you're doing any straight stitch, any quilting, any piecing, that's really important, because you've got a lovely 9mm stitch width plate on the machine normally, But if you're working on finer fabrics or anything with a straight stitch, then that's a good option. We also come with a nice pack of needles just to get you going, some thread, and then mustn't forget our Bernina stitch regulator because it's just brilliant, and that comes in a separate tin. Then we've got our wardrobe that everything fits in. Now you get a nice range of little accessories, oils, cotton reel holders, all that kind of thing. And that all fits in really neatly in this wardrobe. And this has got little legs so it will stand up. So that's our wardrobe, or the Barbie wardrobe as we sometimes call it. So that's really useful. And we've got the table we've mentioned. And then finally, we've got the soft cover as well. So this is just a soft cover that keeps it really nice and clean, stops any fluff or dust getting onto your machine. And it's got pockets for everything to fit in. So obviously you get your foot control as well. It's got a special pocket for that, space for your table. So everything can be packed away really neatly and kept all together.
At the Sewing Studio, we have a great relationship with Bernina. I must say thank you, Hannah, for walking us through this machine.
You're welcome.
Now, if you want to look at anything in more detail, what the machine comes with, any features and functions, you can find all that information on our website. And don't forget, we're here to help as well. So just get in touch, pick up the phone, send us an email, pop on live chat, and we'll answer any questions that you have. Great. Nice to see you again.
Lovely. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and I'll see you again soon.